I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. So today we have another guest that's going to have you guys do some interactive things. I'm going to
Yes.
let her introduce herself and give you her background. But Ashley, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me. I would ask all of you how you're doing, but I talked to one of my former students the other day, and he tells me, he goes, Professor Davis, it's starting to feel a little TMI. I was like, I understand. So we're all feeling cooped up, I imagine. It's been a long few weeks for everybody. But yeah, so what I wanted to do today, first of all, kind of know how I work a little bit. Lots of engagement. Send me chat messages, send me questions. Don't wait till the end for questions. You guys are lucky that you don't have me in person because I typically throw paper if people aren't listening. But now I will just call you out because I can read all of your names. But a little bit about me, a little bit of background. So I started my career with the government, where I worked for prosecutors for the state of Georgia. And then I transitioned into Coca-Cola, where I did global internal communications. My job basically was to run operations for a global team who produced all of the internal marketing for 206 countries. And so my job was to keep that team together, throw money at them. So we would all communicate the same way, like if it was in Africa, if it was in Australia, if it was in Europe, everybody was saying the same thing, right? And then they laid me off and I decided I wasn't done. So I went to a marketing agency for a hot minute. And then I thought it was a great idea to start my own company in the down economy. So I did, and that was a decade ago. And so now I serve clients with internal and leadership communications and transformation, and basically all of the things that you guys are experiencing and seeing now through your email, at your companies, the presidents who are sending messages. My job is basically to help that leadership team, help them navigate situations like this. Okay, so that is the super high level version. Have any of you guys connected to me on LinkedIn yet? No,
They didn't know. They didn't have your link. I'm gonna post the link now.
Oh, you're gonna post it now? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll also. Are you posting it in chat?
I was gonna post it in their group me.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll go ahead and.
Unless you want it in chat, I can do that in chat too.
We'll go ahead and do it in yours, and then. Okay, there we go. And please forgive me for some of this because I'm on so many different types of video programs right now. I'm feeling off. So. Okay. So guys, go ahead and connect to me on LinkedIn because I'm going to want to share some of that with you. But I wanted to ask you guys, so you're in, and this is the Principles of Marketing, Jen?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So you guys are pretty much learning the basics of marketing, which is a ton of fun. So tell me, what questions, all right, let's start this off. Based on the last 3 weeks of our lives, what questions do you have about marketing? We're going to start there, and then I'm going to, believe it or not, design the presentation from there. Mr. Torres, I'm so glad. You look very thoughtful and the question you want to ask me. So I like that. Please bring it forward.
I'm thinking on the question, I'm going to do it to you. Like these 3 weeks have been just not that good for me. So
yeah.
Yeah.
From a marketing perspective, how does it make you feel from a marketing perspective on what you're seeing coming out of some of these companies?
Mm, it's not what I was expecting. Is the thing that the way they're handling things, like trying to sell products like the mask.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're giving so much importance to masks instead of at least for me trying to get the vaccine or a cure for it,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
try to promote that. So
Well, and what we're seeing is actually a lot of companies trying to adapt to what is considered a new environment. And let me give you an example of that is after 9/11, when the towers went down, you saw a lot of American flags, united, things like that. So what I'm seeing is companies really struggling from a marketing perspective to figure out how to go forward, to figure out how do they get their messaging right? How do they get their branding done and not be offensive, right? And some companies are doing really well. Other companies really aren't. And I have seen so many examples of all different ways. But I think marketing right now in the last 3 weeks really shows us how important understanding the principles of marketing is. And it's very much about kind of connecting to your audiences. We all know that. But also making sure that your messaging and your branding is communicating effectively. And this wouldn't be any different than when you create a personal brand, okay? And so that's part of what we're gonna cover today is a little bit of personal branding. So are all of you guys juniors, is that right?
We have one senior, that's Tasia.
Okay.
And the rest are juniors.
Gotcha, okay. So we're gonna talk a little bit about personal branding, and then how many of you have actually been taught how to network and how to build relationships? Anyone? Meredith? Yeah, she's getting off mute.
Sorry, I was trying to connect you to LinkedIn.
No worries.
Okay, so the question was personal branding?
No. Has anyone ever taught you, like step by step, how to build relationships?
Oh.
Like professional relationships, networking? No. Okay.
No.
And that's
hard not.
Yeah.
What not to do.
Right. You make a few mistakes and then realize, oh, okay, I burnt that bridge. Let me try again. Right. So yeah, I want to go through that, and then, again, you guys ask me questions. You're welcome to private message me questions, and I will be checking that, and I will answer kind of as we go, just so we can balance all the different kind of conversations going on here. So first off, let's talk about networking, and then I'll probably end it with LinkedIn so that you guys can see how you can leverage LinkedIn for the next 2 years to make sure that you guys are well positioned to get jobs when you graduate. Sound good? Is there anything else that you wanted from me? How about this? If there is anything else you need from me after you read my LinkedIn profile as I'm talking, send me a chat and let me know, okay? Because I want to make sure you guys get out of here with something so that we can all go start our Fridays. Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
Let me make you co-host real quick.
Okay, thank you.
There you go.
Great. Let me see. You know what? It's all good.
It's not doing it?
Oh, actually, yes, it is.
Oh, okay.
Okay, can you guys see this?
Yep.
Okay.
I can. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. I can see y'all on the side here too. Okay, well, this is kind of obnoxious, but we'll get to it anyway. So a little bit about sustaining professional relationships. And I know that as you're in classes, it's like drilled into your mind. You've got to build relationships. It's who you know if you want to get a job, right? Everybody's heard that. Yep. And I don't know. Sure it is. It's who you know, but I also think it's the relationships you manage, no matter where they are in different companies, that can help you get a job. So what I just kind of wanted to share a little bit here is that in networking, you really want to make sure that you're providing value. That is the number one most important thing, is that you're providing value to that relationship. Because if it's more about receiving than giving, you're going to see the difference in whether or not people will respond to you, okay? Whether or not you're able to get people like me on the phone. And also too, I think it's really important to meet people where they're at. And here's what I mean by that. For example, one of my best friends, she has 3 little kids. So she's at home, homeschooling. She also runs the global digital transformation. Basically every website from Kimberly-Clark, the company that sells a lot of toilet paper, right? She runs all of that. So right now is probably not a good time to ask for her time, because she doesn't know her head from her butt because she's so busy trying to teach her kids and run an entire organization. And it's very hard. So make sure you're meeting people where they're at when it comes to asking for something, asking for lunch, asking for coffee. Because if you can kind of tap into that, people will be more likely to flex their schedule for you because they know that you appreciate their time, okay? And no, I think it's really important that there's an ebb and flow to relationships. And especially keep in mind, guys, I'm talking about professional relationships. I will tell you that the relationships you have at home are very, very complicated, but relationships in general are complicated, and they need to be cared for. But it's also kind of one of those things where there's a time where you might talk to a person a lot more because you have particular topics you're looking at or things like that, and then they might fall off for about a year or two. And that's okay. I mean, it just happens. But I find that a lot of new professionals don't understand that ebb and flow. Instead, they feel like they're being ghosted or being rejected, and that's not what's happening, okay? And then I think this is one big point, and then we're going to get to the steps I want to cover with you guys. How many of you guys have found a mentor? Feel free to come off mute if you want to. Otherwise, I'm going to pick on Mr. Torres again. I'm not doing that. I'm going after somebody else. Hold on. I'm picking somebody.
I have a mentor.
Yeah.
I have
You
a
do?
mentor as well.
Yeah. How did you find that mentor?
She was my tutor before she graduated at A&M, and then now she's in her career field. So she was like a senior, like my freshman year.
That's fantastic. Okay. And somebody else, is that my phone? Okay, hold on. I might have done something. 1 second, okay?
I think it's gone now.
Okay. But I want to talk about mentoring relationships because having been a mentor for many, many years, it's one of those things where people should realize that not everything is a mentoring opportunity. Meaning, you may meet someone and you really admire their career, but there might not be chemistry there. So before thinking that everybody who is is technically more seasoned than you, or, you know, has a few more years experience, you really need to be cautious about who you let influence your life. Because if you don't, you could end up taking advice that isn't helpful to you. Maybe, you know, and so I think that's really important. Through the years, I have realized that a lot of people look to me as a mentor, but we didn't have enough common ground. And so for a mentoring relationship to really be beneficial, you've got to, you know, make sure you have that common ground, make sure that there's time allotted to it. So it's a very complex relationship, and definitely worth seeing if you feel like you're a good match for that person, so they can advise you and kind of help you along the way, because it really is, mentoring is life-giving work. And I know Jen understands this, because as a teacher, I think it's almost built into what we do. I don't know if you'd agree or disagree, but I feel like it's one of those things that's always been there. And, you know, it's
part of the job.
It is part of the job. Yeah, it's the best part of the job, I think. Okay, guys, any questions? Am I boring you yet? Yeah, okay. It's all good. We'll get through this.
Good.
Okay, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying you good. You good. Everything sounds good.
Okay. Okay, so I'm actually going to show you how to network. And by the way, this handout, and I should have done this differently, but in all honesty, I didn't get it done until about 20 minutes ago. I'm very efficient. But this handout is with Professor Riley, so she's going to send it to you guys. So don't feel the need to read it. And I'm not going to go line by line, but I want you to understand how to build relationships, because I think so many times we tell new professionals that you need to, you know, you need to find a person in the company so you can get that job. And you guys will know that, because as you start to graduate, those with more relationships will end up getting the job offers before those people who don't take the time to build the relationships they need in order to enter the workforce. Okay, so I want to give you guys a couple of tips that it's very straightforward. And once you actually do this and you make this a habit, you can come up with your own ways to do it. But it helps to have at least a starting point. And that's the only thing I'm trying to accomplish today, is giving you guys a little bit of a starting point. So I know that all of you guys have LinkedIn profiles, because you guys had that as an assignment. So all of this is based off your LinkedIn connections. Okay. So step one would be sending an introduction note and asking for a 15 to 30-minute call. And keep in mind, I think this is important. Don't ask people to review your resume or things like that. Build the relationship first, because if you just jump into asking somebody for something, it's off-putting as a professional. And so I think it's best to kind of build that relationship, and then you can start asking, because you know, you never know how they might be able to provide value to you until you start getting to know them. Okay. So send an introduction note and ask for a 15 to 30-minute phone call. And part of that is making sure you go on their LinkedIn page and you know what they do. So as you're connecting with people, connect with people who have similar interests to you, and use your student status to make that the connection point. Like, I'm a student, I'm looking to learn about this industry. You have a lot of qualifications and experience that I could learn from. Will you take 15 minutes to talk to me? I'll do all the work, I'll come prepared. So can you imagine how effective that would be? Because I'm sitting here going, 15 minutes? Yeah, of course I've got 15 minutes, okay? And then learn to work the numbers as you're trying to build these relationships. And what I typically do is I'll pick 5 connections that I find interesting, and I'll send them all a note, hoping that like 2 of them get back to me, okay? And that's a sales tactic, by the way, because not everybody's going to respond to you, and you've got to be able to move on from it, okay? Hold on one second. Okay. Yep, I needed to see people, sorry. So anyway, I lost my place. Okay. And then when you do start connecting to people, because you've done the introduction note, right? You have complimented them, but it's on you to do the work for that meeting, to send a seasoned professional a calendar invitation, to make sure you come with questions, and I'll share that with you here in a minute. And the easier it is, the easier that you make it to connect, people will be more willing to talk to you. Okay, hold on one second. I'm going to stop talking. Dominique, go ahead and ask your question.
So this was just like a marketing question. And so I'm
Sure.
talked about like how this quarantine has affected everybody like in the past 3 weeks. And so I see, especially like on the TV, like really on my phone too, like how marketing is different. Like they target like the fact that it's quarantine, like Eats and Grub and whatnot are all switching up commercials and whatnot based off this quarantine. And so I wanted to know from you, like, do you think that's like a real costly effort? Like, does that cost a lot for a company to just switch their marketing just like that? And then what is that return on investment for that marketing? When will like you see it in like profits or they stock price? Like when will you see that marketing return on investment?
Oh, wow. So you're talking about, there's a lot of different costs going on. So we'll just shift because, guys, I'll talk about whatever you want to know. So great question. Thank you very much for bringing this up. So the cost, interesting enough, there's a lot of different costs that are going into marketing. Is it costly to shift your entire marketing strategy? Absolutely. Because okay, thriving marketing companies, Jen, you notice how delicate I was trying to be? Those who do it okay.
Yeah.
They probably have an 18 to 2-year plan. They're working off a long-term plan, including like their social media. So imagine how many companies have to scrap their entire social media plan when this started to happen. And so that is actually very costly, just if you're looking at the line items. But then we have another cost, and that cost would be the reputational cost, okay? So let me give you an example of reputational, and by the way, to me, it's reputational and brand cost, okay? So a good example is, okay, let's use Delta. Let's use Delta as an example. Let's say that Delta continues to email me all these newsletters. Hey, come fly with us. You know, your Delta Sky Miles are waiting. And they didn't make a change to any of that. It would damage their brand and their reputation because I would view it and feel it as being deeply irresponsible. And so the cost of that, I don't actually, there are companies who track it, but it's very, very hard to know the reputational and brand cost, because what happens is it affects your bottom line differently. Meaning if people don't have a positive view of your company, they're not buying your product. So does that help you at all, Dominique? Am I being clear?
Yeah, I get it. I'm getting it. My second question is when do you expect to see that return on investment from that switch of to be reflected? How long does that take? Like a month, 2 months?
Oh gosh, in this particular situation, and Jen, feel free to chime in. I don't believe that companies will see a return outside of reputational value. Because, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No.
It was because a lot of companies are having to stop production. I mean, you guys look at Corona beer. They have to stop production.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with their beer. We all know that. But it's so much bigger than pushing your products right now. So Jen, please fill in for that.
Yeah, so I would say, like, you know, there is always a battle in marketing departments as it relates to tying back the ROI or return on investment to your marketing initiatives. And part of that challenge is that you don't have tangible things like a string tied from this one precise action to this one precise purchase. So right now, I would say that it's even harder, you know, from a traditional marketing standpoint. That ROI, you might not see that for, or be able to track that or show that in a presentation for 6 to 8 months. You're not going to see, like, if you do a campaign in January, you're not going to see all of the results of that campaign until June or July in a lot of cases. So now I would say that it's even further pushed out and even harder to really tie it in. Because a lot of it is going to be brand management, because so many people see this whole thing as a way to really understand and learn about a company, to say, okay, well, how do they treat their people during this crisis? Or how are they communicating with me during this crisis? Are they over communicating? So many people are tired of getting email that knows one specific company's opinion on COVID. You know, my parents run an email marketing business, and they had their clients, one of their clients' employees was saying, like, oh, we need to send out a message about COVID and we need to give all these tips and all this. But then it's like, there's some liability there, because then you're giving people information on something that's health related, but you're not a health related company. So it's kind of like everybody wants to rush to give their personal buy-in, and that's causing the teams to shift. And you're asking teams that are remote to shift. Kind of like your original question, Mr. Spence, where you say, like, what is the cost of that to make that random last minute shift? Well, that affects everything because you had already planned that. For a business, most businesses have everything scheduled out on a quarter system. So this happened in the middle of March. So we're shifting from Q1 to Q2. So now it's like, okay, we'll push this back, push that back, push this back. We might have already paid for this. We might have already paid for that. All of this budget has been allocated. So now we have to reallocate those funds. We don't know when we can pick back up doing things normally. So everything goes on hold. And that's a very costly sudden shift. But then you also have to say, okay, well, we can't just go dormant. We still have to make sure that we are doing something. We need to still be bringing in income. So how can we do that, but do it tactfully? If you follow DSW, they are flooding the market with sales.
Are they really?
They are. Like, they did half off of all dress shoes. And when you think about it, like, they have Cole Haan dress shoes. So if you say half off of all dress shoes and you have a $200 shoe, that's now $100. And then you buy it and they email you a confirmation, but at the same time they say, oh, well, you know, thank you for purchasing, we'll blah, 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 shoe lover, because that's their brand. By the way, your orders will be delayed out of the warehouse due to COVID-19. So the question begins, like, okay, well, you have put out marketing communications that would promote your products and the purchase of your products to be able to tie in that ROI that you're asking about, Mr. Spence. But at the same time, you have to tell them it's going to be delayed. and what does that customer experience look like. So we might do things that would try to drive that bottom line during a pandemic like this, but at the same time, you can't really service it that well. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I get it. I'm getting it.
So it's a delicate balance, and people are also, it's very transparent how people are treating customers right now. Allstate is giving back a percentage of premiums because people can't drive anywhere. So they're doing that across companies. So what does that look like if Allstate is doing that but Nationwide doesn't? And what are going to be the ramifications of that? Because now I'm looking at that, and I'm like, State Farm isn't doing that, and American Family Insurance isn't doing that. So now I'm going to Allstate and putting in my information to get a quote so I can switch. And it's like Allstate put that out there. They're not really going to lose any money because nobody's going to crash, right? The whole insurance thing is a scam anyway, but State Farm and American Family and all those other insurance companies could potentially lose people. They weren't doing anything, and they weren't not doing anything. They were just staying stagnant, but they could potentially lose people because of what a competitor did. So it's a very
dicey.
Yeah.
Place to be.
And I don't think it's really any one right way to do it. I think a lot of quote unquote best practices will come from this time whenever it's over, because this isn't something that we had faced before. So it's a challenge, and there's no really one right way to do it. Should you flood, social media because everybody's bored and at home? Some people are doing that. Old Navy's doing that a lot. They've increased their budget for social media ads because I'm getting them all the time. So is that right? The reallocation of those funds, because at the end of the day, I think the most critical thing, and I'm going to be quiet to let Ashli talk again, is knowing your audience and knowing where your audience is. So that DJ that did spun for 9 hours, he really knew his audience, and he was trying to give people an out and some type of release. And that has really started this wave of smaller DJs and other performers flooding the marketplace with, I'll do this little concert, I'll do that. But what's the ramification for that after this is all over? Are people going to still want to pay $200 for tickets for something that you just gave away for free?
I think we are in for some of the most interesting times in marketing that we will ever see.
Yeah.
Because exactly what you said is that there's no necessarily, if you do it this way, you're right. But the truth is, we do know a lot of companies doing it wrong, and it's a delicate balance. Yeah. Thank you for that, Jen. I appreciate it. Hey, Meredith, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if the change in marketing, would that help restaurants as far as them having sales? Because even though they're having to do takeout, they still can have customers versus no sales at all?
So to answer your question is that right now, if I were a restaurant manager, okay, and running that marketing, there's a couple of things they'd have to be thinking about, which is the amount of money you put out for marketing versus knowing that your business has been significantly impacted. I would be extremely worried to throw money into marketing at this exact time outside of social media, because social media is free. So chances are I would increase the social media. I would increase the community efforts, meaning how can you partner up with other communities and other restaurants so that everybody's getting a little bit. Because here's the thing, they don't know how long this is going to last. And I can imagine right now that they're being very cautious with the money they do spend because they're not sure if they're going to be able to pay their employees and for how long. So I think the question is dynamic, and it probably is very dependent on how much revenue the company actually has coming in. Mm-hmm. That's, you know, so I'm sorry to dance around the question, but I don't think there's a straight answer to it. Okay, does anybody else have a question? I'll give you a minute to come off mute, because I'm finding this more interesting than what I came here to talk about. And you guys have a handout. Any more questions about current marketing?
So
okay, I'm going to call I told you I was like that.
So we started talking about like the networking thing and mentors. I remember when I was in college, that's not something that I would have raised my hand to either, because I was like, I don't know. I would ask people to be my mentor because I saw them doing something that I liked, or, you know, I like the idea of finding people on LinkedIn and just trying to send them a message, or, you know, try to send them a connection. But, you know, sometimes that gets a little complicated if you don't have premium and stuff. So how would you, if they aren't 100% sure what they want to do, how would you go about figuring out who to seek out? And then after somebody agrees to be your mentor, what do you do next?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think it's one, it is perfectly okay not to know what the heck you want with life right now. You guys are students. You're kind of in this discovery process, and any good mentor is going to know that. But you probably also know areas that you really like. And so what I would do, like, for example, I'm trying to learn, I'm an avid researcher of emotional intelligence. Okay, that's just kind of like one of my areas that I really like to dig in and learn about. And so I would go on LinkedIn and type in emotional intelligence and in the search bar and see what comes up, because you will see people come up, you will see positions come up, like there's all sorts of things that can come up that can kind of broaden your thinking, but it will also bring up people. And maybe that's where you start.
How did you choose that topic though? Like Googling emotional intelligence, how did you pick that among all things?
So I picked that because I feel very strongly that how leaders relate to their employees is probably the biggest reason companies make money. So if leadership isn't operating, in a way that people can feel pride and engaged, like things like that, and I think all of that's connected to emotional intelligence. And how I came to that is really my first job with the government, as I worked with elected district attorneys. And it was all about knowing how to manage their constituents and their people. And that just kind of spawned something that was really interesting to me. I was also very interested in marketing, but then I was interested in communications as well, because I found it to be a little more challenging. I also got a really great piece of advice from one of my professors back in undergrad. Is she asked me to write down all the things I hate. And I know that sounds really negative. It's not. Stick with me. But the thing is, you might not know what you love right now, because that takes time, but you definitely know what you don't like. So a good example is, I've always known I don't want to do media relations. It's just never been something that was interesting to me. I wasn't interested in learning about it. And so I knew that I didn't like that aspect And so I didn't, I didn't bother to put my time in it. So that kind of gets to one part of your question, is maybe kind of write down things you don't like and then reverse engineer it. Okay, because you will start to figure out things you do like. Like for example, I knew when I was in school that I liked how complicated it was to do public relations, because to me it was very complicated. The writing was complicated, the thinking and all of that, and I started to go from there. I started becoming a part of organizations and associations on campus, because at least those were free and cheap. Like some of them, were much cheaper. Because let's be honest, you don't have all this money to throw at, you're already learning, you're already throwing money at it, right? So I would become a part of those organizations and just kind of get to know people, get to know the speakers like me. But that's how I kind of tiptoed into learning kind of what I wanted, and then from there, I connect to people who are smarter than me. That's what I do. So, and then you mentioned the mentoring. I can't remember the last part of your question, but that'll be okay. All right. So is your dog okay?
Yeah, they're doing some construction in my neighborhood, and she likes to lay in my office and supervise me on her office bed. But when she hears something outside, she runs to.
I am surprised that Chloe has not come up into the camera yet, my cat, because she's normally supervising me. So I'm like, this is fun. Yeah. Are there any other questions?
So did you major in marketing in undergrad?
I majored in public relations and communications. Okay. But I grew up with entrepreneurs in my life. So I started my first company at 14. And I have just always known the marketing side of the house from an entrepreneur perspective. And so helped my family build multiple businesses. And so my knowledge of marketing actually comes from my family. But I deal with the more strategic communication side of the house, or the internal marketing that you would see and experience in your companies.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
So from we have quite a few entrepreneurs in the class. How would you suggest that they connect the ideas and principles of communications, marketing with their entrepreneurial endeavors? How do you learn how to do some of this stuff if they're not, a lot of them aren't marketing majors that they want to start their own businesses? How do you connect that and get practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, the networking, and you guys have that handout. You need to understand that what I shared in here actually isn't that much different than building a marketing strategy, because you need those relationships. And number one, you've got to know your audience. So if you're building a business of any kind, you have got to be able to map out your audience. You need to know what they like, what they don't like. And a lot of this is forecasting, and a lot of this is assumptions. And I get that. And that does make marketing a little bit of a gray area. But you have to be able to know what to put money in. So I would suggest learning about search engine optimization. That's going to be very important for the entrepreneurs. Figure out what to invest in versus what to do yourself, because that will help your marketing, by the way. So if you're not gifted in the constructing a website, then you're actually going to spend more time where you could be making money, because your time is money. When you're an entrepreneur, every hour that you're not billing, you see what I'm saying? That's kind of how it works. But anyway, hire people and make sure that because that would be a marketing expense. Getting a website is a marketing expense. Doing Facebook ads is an expense. And so how I think you learn some of that is there are a lot of really solid associations that have great content. And I would, especially in the beginning of your business, connect with those associations that produce really good content. I'm not going to say they all do. So I would get some recommendations from your professors. But connect to those associations, because through that, you can actually learn a little bit more about the trends. Because if you understand the trends, like for example, a trend right now is TikTok, okay? And that's all the rage, and all companies are trying to figure out how to get on TikTok and things like that. But the truth is, if your audience isn't on TikTok and you're wasting your time or your marketing dollars in there, that's where you're going to come into a problem being an entrepreneur, because you're not putting your money where your audience is. And if you're not putting your money where your audience is, you're not increasing revenue. Therefore, you could say that your business is probably going to be hurting.
Okay. Good answer. Good feedback.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have any questions?
Leslie, you have been sitting there so patiently. Hi. Got any questions?
No, ma'am, I don't have one.
Okay, she didn't even try, Jen. Do you see that?
I do.
Like, is this for a grade? I mean, come on.
It all is. Something that I'm curious about. So Ashley and I met in a marketing and communications networking group on Facebook. It has over 15,000 members. Is that right? So I want to know about that. Did you start that by yourself, or I want to know how that came about?
Oh, yeah, sure. Happy to tell you a little bit about that. So the group was actually started in 2011, and it was started just off of an event. So Katie Beck-Mallory is the founder of the group, and they did an event one day and just decided to start it. So it's probably the most organically grown group that you've ever seen. And then I came on about 2.5 years ago, and that's when I did all of the branding. And we really took it to the next level with a professional group, because it was already so powerful that we wanted to make it a place where people could really find information. And so a little bit about the group is that it's for women, and it's a professional development group. So our number one purpose is to support women in marketing and communications. Okay. And so the group, I think, a lot of people look at the group and probably, like, we've done no marketing of that group. Did you realize that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there has been none of the leadership team actually markets that group. It's everybody else. And we're like, all right, you do the work. But yeah, so when I came on the team, and I think this is important from a marketing perspective too, I developed a content strategy. And that content strategy, we have seen it come to life really over the years. And by the way, I had to rewrite the strategy 3 weeks ago. We all did. So anyway, that community it's really interesting to run. And I will tell you from a marketing perspective, it is very dynamic to run a social community versus any other work I've done in my career. Even when I've done marketing campaigns, started companies, like running a community that is literally on like constant rotation has been very fascinating, because I will say that the two things that you need to be is consistent and adaptable. And those two things that don't always live together, and they're very hard. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, that's a little bit about the group, and we have a leadership team of 10. So it's definitely highly collaborative, and yeah, it's one of those things where we couldn't have imagined it being where it is today, because I know that Katie never thought it was going to be anything more than, you know, hey, here's a few people who want to talk. Right. Like, that was her intent, you know.
Awesome. Yeah. So you had mentioned a content strategy. We have some social media people. We have some people who don't want anything to do with it. What exactly does a content strategy entail?
Man, this could be a whole lecture. Okay. So, okay. Give me a second. I want to make sure I.
Yep. And Aaron Blue. Good, sir.
I'm sorry, what?
Aaron is a student in the class. Okay. Mr. Blue, where did he go? Mr. Blue. After she answers this, I'm coming to you for a question.
Okay. So to try to keep it simple on content strategy, really it's about answering some basic questions. He's in the restroom, Jen.
What?
He's in the restroom. He just let everybody know. Thank you. But content strategy really is your messaging. Okay. What do you want your audience? Now we're always going to go back to, you know, your audience at this point. Now you have to develop content that makes sense to them and deliver content that they want to receive. Okay, because these are things you're going to know because you know your audience. But it's really about kind of answering the questions. What do you want your audience to know? How do you want them to feel? And what do you want them to do? And that's a very basic look at some of the elements of content strategy. So, and I don't want to simplify it too much, because you and I both know, Jen, that it's quite a complex. It's complex to deliver for sure, but really it's about the messaging that you want your audience to pick up so that you can make money. It drives your revenue.
I think that's a great depiction. All right, Mr. Aaron.
Yeah.
Cut on your video camera and ask a question, sir.
You said what happened?
I said ask a question. I know you have some. What's a marketing question that you have?
I'm sorry. My question was, it was kind of with Dom's, you know, how he asked, you know, about how marketing is going now since, you know, with this coronavirus and everything going on. And then my
think we lost him.
I think we did too. Oh, he might be back.
My bad. We good now?
Yep.
Yeah. We can hear you.
Okay. Once everything do go back normal, how much money would companies be wasting once they have to take down like all the coronavirus stuff? Like, would they really be losing any money for having to change their stuff away from coronavirus and all that?
Yeah. So let me give you some tactical examples of how much of a loss companies are taking right now in marketing. So here's an example. Let's say that they were planning a big event in March, and that event actually directly connected to their customers. And that event drove revenue for Q2 and Q3. Well, that event has now been canceled. Those relationships weren't developed, okay? And there's a cost to that, but also think about, okay, I don't know if any of you guys are graphic designers, okay, but graphic designers are very important to the marketing process.
I am.
Oh, hi. Okay, good. You're a graphic designer. Then you know what I'm talking about, Mr. Blue. So here's the thing is that you would have created all these graphics, okay, for a variety of different situations. Maybe it was advertising for your business. Maybe it was flyers that were going in the mail. Maybe it was all the social media stuff you're posting. And you had already had that in the plan. You had the work done, and now it's been tabled. And a lot of that can't be used again because we don't know what it's going to. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? So the expense is really we're unable to calculate the expense that most organizations have had to their marketing team at this point.
But they know they're losing money. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, they do.
That's what I'm saying. If companies know they're going to lose more money, then they're going to lose money. Why do they still do it? Is it like they have to stay on the market? Side as far as everything. Like, do they have to lose money?
Yeah, they do. Okay, so this goes back to the reputational and brand, because here's the thing: if they just forge ahead and pretend we're not in a pandemic, when we do get out of this pandemic, I'm not shopping with them because I'm just going to think they're jerks.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the reputational and brand power that we're seeing right now. And there is either going to be a long-term ROI or a very short-term loss that they will feel once we get out of captivity, right?
Okay.
So you also can't just shut down your marketing, because here's the thing is that, let me give you a good example, Nike. Okay, have you been following Nike at all? So
yes,
what
ma'am.
Nike is, okay. I am way too young for ma'am. Don't do that again. But Nike, instead of coming full circle to do their shoes, they innovated a new mask, and that mask is now being done and shipped off. So what they did is they adapted and then used this innovation as a way to market how they're supporting the frontline workers right now. And so they will see a lot of return on that, but the expense, I mean, Jen, I can't imagine a company being able to calculate the loss. Could you at this point?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
But no, okay,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense, though. That does make sense.
Not at
But
this point. I can't see it. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm sorry I don't have very clear answers. I don't think anyone does right now.
No.
We're all trying to understand the impact of what we're going through, And I just don't think we do yet.
Agreed. So, do we have any other questions on the floor? Y'all are a quiet bunch this Friday. So thank you, Ashley, so much for your time. We appreciate your willingness and ability to speak to networking, mentoring, diversifying your marketing experience, and the entrepreneurship. I think we've managed to cover quite a few topics.
I know. I felt like I jumped all over the place. Sorry, guys. Like, let's all quit for the day early and go have a beer. It's been a long week for all of us.
It has. But I think it's helpful, at least to hear somebody in marketing and that has experience with all of this and see a different side of it, because learning from the textbook is one thing, but actually being able to see some of this stuff unfold, I think, is a unique value add for students. So thank you so much for your time. Guys, her handout is in Blackboard, so you can go there.
And make sure to connect to me on LinkedIn. I'm giving all of you permission to connect. I will go through and approve them. So I can be the one connection that can help you connect to others. Because when you connect to me, you also connect to the 2,500 people I'm connected to. Meaning you can scroll that list going, I kind of like that. See what I'm saying?
And then you can add them. If it flags it and it doesn't, just click more on her profile and then select connect, and that's how you can get past the initial wall that they put up. Additionally, if you've connected with me, which you should have for your grade, by the way, then it will have her as a second degree connection, and it should let you connect with her easier. So her LinkedIn address is in the chat for here. It's in your group chat as well as your Blackboard. So thank you so much, Ashley. You guys have things to do tonight. And with that, I will see you guys all on Monday.
Take care, everyone.
All right, you too.
Monday. Have a good weekend.
You too.